42 million people watched the video. A man's hands around his pregnant wife's throat in a ballroom in front of everyone. And do you know what he said afterward? It was a necessary correction. This is not a story told by the victim. This is the story told by the man who did it in his own work. From inside his own mind, a man who built a billion-dollar empire and truly believed that owning a company meant he could own a person. He never once called it abuse. He called it order. He called it love. By the time his wife lay bleeding on an operating table, almost dying, giving birth to his daughter, he was calculating his next legal move to take the baby. By the time a judge sentenced him to 25 years, he still believed he was the victim. Stay with me, because this story will show you something deeply uncomfortable about how control hides in plain sight. How a prison can have no walls, no locks, and still be a prison. And how one woman, with almost nothing left, found the one door he forgot to lock. The most dangerous abuser is not the one who loses control. It is the one who believes he is always in control. If this story made you feel something, made you think of someone, made you understand something you could not name before, share it. Someone in your life may need to hear it today. Like, comment, and subscribe, because every week we tell the stories that do not get told.
This is not about abuse. It is about a breakdown of discipline, an upsetting of the natural order. It is about protecting a legacy from the very person who is meant to help carry it. The story she tells begins with the beep of a machine. My story begins with a phone call from my lawyer. Tori was awake. The doctors were fussing over her, those performative gestures of concern. They said the baby, my daughter, was stable. That was good. An heir must be protected. Then they spoke of Tori. They used words like significant trauma. I saw it as a public relations problem, an inconvenience that required management. They showed her an image on a screen, the outline of my child, a tool to generate sympathy. I knew then the narrative was already being twisted. Her hand went to her neck. I imagined her touching the marks, feeling the proof she needed for her story. She was always dramatic. She would be tracing the bruises now, confirming her version of reality. She needed to believe I was the villain, that this was some grand betrayal. It was simpler than that. It was a loss of control, on her part, that required a firm response. She needed to remember her place. The baby's kick would feel like a vindication to her, a sign, but they were both mine. Her body was just a vessel for my legacy. The detectives were an expected nuisance. Dr. Hoffman's gentle voice was a calculated move. They asked if she was ready to answer questions. Of course she was. This was her moment. The stage was set. 2 officers, one with tired eyes, the other with a sharp gaze. They were predictable. Just more pieces on the board I had to navigate. It was a necessary correction. That is what I told myself. The ballroom was perfect. The lighting was perfect. My image was perfect, but she was a flaw in the design. Her face, a mask of quiet rebellion. I saw it all. The way she held her glass, the way she avoided my gaze. She was ungrateful. I gave her everything. A life of impossible luxury. And in return, she was supposed to play a simple part. Tonight she refused, so I had to remind her of the rules. My hands found her throat to make her understand. It was not violence. It was communication. A quiet lesson in front of everyone, so she would never forget who was in charge. They call it a crime. I call it restoring order. They would never understand the pressure of maintaining perfection. Her father would be there by now, that old man, poisoning her mind, just like he always did, making her weak. She needed my strength, not his foolish sentiment. He could not protect her from the world. Only I could do that. That is what she failed to grasp. Her safety was in her obedience. I sat in my car, the leather cool against my skin. I would let the lawyers handle the noise, the police, the hospital. It was all a temporary inconvenience, a messy, public tantrum she had forced me to quell. I would give her a day, let her father play the hero. Then I would call. I would reel her back in. She always came back. My words were a leash he could never break. I would simply fix this. The world operates on power, and James Caldwell had forgotten what real power looked like. He would see it soon enough. It was not about promises, it was about reality. And I was her reality. Then came the best friend, Rebecca Morrison, always a source of bad advice, whispering poison in Tori's ear. She brought a tablet, the modern torch for the witch hunt. It is everywhere. Of course it was. It was designed to be a calculated leak meant to cause maximum damage. The video played, black and white, like an old movie, devoid of context, devoid of her provocations. There she was, the perfect victim, my hand on her belly, my face twisted, a performance for the camera. My hands moved to her neck, a firm, controlling gesture, her eyes wide, her mouth open, her pregnant belly, the ultimate symbol for her narrative. The image was perfect for them. The waiters were extras in her production. They pulled me back. I showed no remorse because I had done nothing wrong. I had simply restored order. Below the video, a number, 42 million, a meaningless figure. Popular opinion is a fickle thing. My lawyers had already issued the statement, a masterpiece of control, altercation, pregnancy-related emotional instability. It was the truth, packaged for public consumption. We would get her the help she needed. My mother played her part beautifully. Cream suit, pearl earrings, the picture of dignified concern. Tori has been very difficult. We have all been worried. The narrative was now mine. I was the concerned husband. She was the unstable wife. Her phone rang in the sterile room. A private number. My number. I knew she would answer. It is an instinct I trained into her. Come home, Victoria. My voice was calm. The voice of reason, of authority. We will forget this happened. I was being generous. I was offering her a path back to the life I provided. I said no. The word was a malfunction, a system error, a sound without meaning. I asked her to repeat it, certain I had misheard. I said no. Then came the laugh. It was not born of humor. It was the sound of a gear grinding, of a machine breaking. You do not get to say no to me, Victoria. It was a simple statement of fact. I own you. I own that baby. You will come home, or I will dismantle your world piece by piece. The line went dead. The choice was made. Not by her, but for her. She thought she was strong. It was a charming delusion. She would be sitting in that sterile room, thinking of ways to escape, planning a new life. But there was no life without me. I created her. Victoria Ashford was my masterpiece. Victoria Caldwell was a forgotten sketch. I poured a glass of whiskey. The amber liquid swirled. I made some calls, secured my position. The world would see a misunderstanding, a momentary lapse, a husband under stress. They would forgive. They always forgive men like me. She would download some useless app, feeling clever, feeling powerful. It was adorable, really, her small attempts at rebellion, but she was using my phone, on my network, in a world I owned. Every word she recorded would be a confession of her dependence. She thought my words were the weapon. She did not realize they were the cage, and she was already inside. 6 hours. That is all it took for her to undo months of work. The charity gala was a performance, a stage for our perfect life. All she had to do was wear the right costume and smile. I waited in the bedroom. My patience was a finite resource she loved to test. Her pregnancy was an irritation, a distortion of the clean lines I preferred. Her body was becoming a monument to her flaws, her fatigue, her complaints, her constant discomfort. It was all so middle class. She was losing the polish I had so carefully applied. "Are you ready yet?" My voice was tight. We had a schedule to keep, an image to uphold, and she was in the closet, probably choosing something dreadful, something that would make her look common. The navy dress was an insult. It was a surrender, a shapeless, pathetic garment designed for comfort, not for display. It screamed that she did not care, that she was not trying. She was my wife. She was an extension of me. Her appearance was a reflection of my success. That dress reflected failure. My words were sharp for a reason. They were tools to shape her, to guide her back to the proper path. She called it a mood. I called it quality control. Her shaking hands were an admission of guilt. She knew she was wrong. This was a simple negotiation. She was difficult, so I became firm. The gray dress, the black one, the burgundy, all wrong, all clear signs of her defiance. She was deliberately being obtuse. She was fighting me in the only way she knew how, through passive, silent disobedience. Her fear was a scent in the air, thick and cloying. It was necessary. It focused her mind. I chose the champagne gown. It was acceptable. It met the minimum standard. She would photograph well. That was its only purpose. I watched her in the mirror as I left. Her reflection was a stranger, just as it should be. The girl she was before had to be erased. Victoria Caldwell was sentimental and weak. She ran some pointless charity. She wasted time running in circles. She had no ambition, no vision. I gave her a name that mattered. I gave her a world that mattered. The drive was silent. It was better that way. When she spoke, she often said the wrong thing. I preferred to watch the city lights myself, a world I had conquered. She was just another beautiful acquisition. The red carpet was a battlefield of perception. Every camera flash was a bullet, but I knew how to win. My hand on her elbow was a message, a reminder of who was leading. Smile. Look happy. It was a simple command. She obeyed. Because deep down, she knew she needed the structure I provided. Inside, the noise was deafening, the empty chatter of people who mattered, and she was drifting away. She was failing her one duty, to be present, to be mine, to be a perfect reflection. I saw the defiance in her eyes again, the same defiance from the closet. It was a weed that needed to be pulled. The fairy tale was real, but I was the author. And she was trying to rip out the pages. Behind closed doors, I taught her the story. Tonight, she needed a public lesson. Everything was in its place tonight. I watched them all move through the ballroom, a collection of assets and alliances. Then my mother appeared, a vision of cold perfection. She was the architect of this life. Her smile was a weapon she had taught me to wield. She kissed the air near Tori's cheek, a performance of affection. Her eyes, however, performed an appraisal, glowing. The word was a verdict. It meant Tori was swollen, unrefined, a flaw in the otherwise perfect evening. I felt the familiar weight of my mother's disappointment. Tori's quiet thank you was a small relief. She knew the rules. My hand on her elbow was a guide, a reminder. We moved through the crowd as one unit, managed and precise. I decided who we spoke to. I decided when the conversations ended. She was not a wife tonight. She was a statement of my success. Then her face changed. A genuine smile, something wild and uncontrolled, appeared. She was looking at some man across the room, a journalist, a relic from her messy past. She waved at him, a reckless, impulsive gesture. It was a crack in the foundation. He came over, his eyes too sharp, taking everything in. This was Marcus Webb, a man who built his career on tearing down men like me. I felt her relax beside him, becoming Victoria Caldwell again. The name tasted like ash. It was the woman I had worked so hard to erase. My grip on her arm was a silent command. Be Tori Ashford. But she ignored it. She spoke of his world, a world of dirt and accusations. He asked about the baby, a girl, another variable to manage. Then he asked about her future, her work, her plans. The light in her eyes was a fire I thought I had extinguished. He was giving her hope. He was reminding her of the person she was not allowed to be. My wife, he calls her. Tired. I needed to end this. I moved to her side, a necessary intervention. My smile was for the room, but my eyes were for her. A warning. Pregnancy makes her forgetful, I said. A simple explanation for her lapse in judgment. She tried to argue, to reclaim her foolish thoughts. My fingers found the muscle in her arm. A quick, sharp pressure, a reminder of the cost of defiance. The small gasp was for my ears only. We must go, I told the journalist. I pulled her away from his influence. Briss. She stumbled, her body clumsy and unfamiliar. A liability. She asked for the restroom, a tactical retreat on her part. Fine, I let her go. The noise of the party faded as she walked away. I needed a moment to think, to recalibrate. She was becoming a problem again. I waited in the cool marble hallway. The whiskey I had been drinking sharpened the edges of my anger. She was making me look weak, undermining my authority in my own world. She was talking about her little projects, as if they mattered, as if they were not the failures I had saved her from. She emerged from the restroom, her mask perfectly in place. She always looked perfect. It was her greatest skill and her greatest deception. You humiliated me, I said. The words were low, each one a carefully placed stone. You do not talk about your past. You do not have opinions. You do not contradict me in front of my associates. It was a simple set of rules, the rules that kept our world turning. She tried to explain, to justify her defiance. Shut up. I moved closer, letting my shadow cover her. She was 8 months pregnant, unsteady, small. She should have felt fragile. She should have understood her place. She needed to understand how embarrassing she was, how her foolish words could unravel everything I had built. The people inside could not help her. They were part of the audience. My hand found her throat. It was not a thought. It was an instinct. Her back hit the wall. A satisfying thud. The air left her lungs. There would be no more words, no more contradictions. Just a lesson, a final necessary lesson in silence. She clawed at my hand, a frantic, useless struggle. The baby kicked inside her, a final protest. It did not matter. I was saving them both from her ambition. My face was close to hers. I wanted her to see my resolve. I wanted her to understand that I was doing this for us. You are nothing without me. The words were the truth. I squeezed. Her vision began to fade. The gray spots were a sign of acceptance. Her body went limp. My grip held her up. I was in control. She was dying. But a new, better version would be born. A silent, obedient wife. Then the shouting started. Footsteps, intruders. 2 young men pulled me away. They were ruining it. They were stopping the lesson before it was learned. Air rushed into her lungs. She crumpled, her hands flying to her belly. The baby was still moving. The project was not lost. She looked up, her face a mask of tears and terror. Then I saw my mother, standing at the edge of the chaos. Her phone was out. She was recording. Not for help, not for justice. She was documenting the failure, filming the evidence of Tori's final act of defiance, capturing the moment my wife destroyed our family's reputation. Our eyes met. Her face was a blank slate, the face of a woman who understood that sometimes things must be broken to be fixed. She lowered the phone. She had what she needed. Proof. It was all Tori's fault. Everything went black. I woke up in a quiet room. The rhythmic beep of a machine was the only sound. My throat was a landscape of pain. But the baby was alive. My father was there. He looked broken, shattered by a truth he could not comprehend. This was order. The quiet hum of the server banks was a hymn to control. My world was built on logic, on precision. She had tried to shatter that. Last night was a necessary correction, a restoration of balance. Her father, James, was at the hospital now. I could picture his face, that false mask of concern. He would see only what she told him. A daughter's tears were a powerful weapon. They would not see her provocations. They would not see her defiance. She had a choice. She always had a choice. For 3 years, I gave her a perfect life, a gilded cage she was desperate to rattle. She simply needed to understand her place, to appreciate the world I had built for her. And now she would spin her tale. She would start with the fundraiser. My fundraiser. For my company. She called it her non-profit gala, a vanity project I funded. I was closing a 9-figure deal that week, working 18-hour days. But she demanded my presence, my attention. It was a test, a deliberate challenge to my priorities. The phone was a casualty of that pressure. Pressure she applied relentlessly. The glass on the floor was a symbol of her intrusion into my world. A mess I never made. A mess she forced me to acknowledge. So I showed her. I showed her what happens when you push a man who holds up the world. She had to learn. Then came Christmas. My mother. A woman who deserved respect. A tradition that was not negotiable. But Tori wanted to negotiate. To divide loyalty. To put her father on the same level as my family. The wall was a better target than she was. A fist-sized hole is a simple repair. It is a clear message without a single mark on her skin. Was that not mercy? Every object that flew was a carefully calibrated warning, not to harm, but to instruct. They were lessons in cause and effect. Look what you made me do. It was never a question. It was a diagnosis. Her friend Becca encouraged this rebellion. I did not isolate her. I quarantined her. I was protecting our marriage from an infection. That she was trying to destroy our marriage. He stood and walked to the window. His fists were tight. His body shook with a rage that was not his own. He asked about the 3rd year. He twisted my wrist. That is what she told him. An argument, an accident, a misunderstanding. I never meant to hurt her. She slipped on the stairs. That was the story we agreed on. The story that protected us. Then the baby. She said she thought it would fix things. Calm me down. She called herself stupid, but she was not stupid. She was manipulative. She was building her case. Even then, a list of excuses. Every action I took was a reaction to her flaws. Every broken object was a response to her chaos. Every harsh word was a lesson she refused to learn. It was not my fault. It was never my fault. I see that now. Perfectly. I knew her excuses. The pressure of being my wife was too much. It was her fault for not being stronger, for not being better. The pregnancy was a pathetic shield for her inadequacies. She was letting herself go. She was embarrassing me. I never hit her, not in the way common brutes do. I corrected her. I guided her, a firm grip on the arm, a steadying push in the right direction. These were lessons, not attacks. She told her doctor she tripped. That was smart. That was learning. I saw the old man's face, James, twisted in that ridiculous, theatrical pain. He knew nothing. He did not want to know. I isolated her for her own good, to protect her from his weakness, from a world that would have swallowed her whole. But she kept reaching for that weakness, so I had to cut the cord. permanently. Her father was always the ghost at the table, a shadow of influence I worked hard to banish. Our life had no room for him. My schedule, my plans, my priorities came first. That is the definition of marriage, a union. She was part of my world now, not his. 3 years. It was a testament to my success that I had kept his influence at bay for 3 years. He did not notice because there was nothing to notice. Just a successful man managing his household, managing his wife, managing the image that was crucial to my empire. I had been paying attention. I had been paying perfect attention to every detail. He is coming for me. Let him. He thinks his money gives him power. James Caldwell built a fortune. I built an industry. His world is old. His connections are relics. He will send his foot soldiers, his paper pushers, his Diane Sullivan. They will look for cracks in my foundation. They will find nothing. Because my world is not built on luck or inheritance. It is built on will, on control, on absolute precision. He thinks this is about his daughter, about revenge. This is a business transaction, a hostile takeover. And I have never lost a hostile takeover in my entire life. He is bringing a knife to a war of his own creation. It is all about order. My empire runs on it. She threatened that order. They think this is about money or stocks. They are children. My company is an extension of my will. A monument to control. Shareholders are a necessary nuisance. A board is a body to be managed. The share price is a symbol of stability. Her chaos threatens that stability. A scandal. A loss of confidence. These are weapons of the weak. They seek to poison the foundation. Diane and James, puppets. They find a disgruntled clerk, Gregory Whitman, a small man who cannot see the larger vision. He sees only spreadsheets, not destiny. I gave him a life he could never have built. Now he feels entitled to betray me. He must be reminded of his place, of what he has to lose. His family is not a target. They are a reminder that his choices have weight. We are all watching him. For his own protection. A journalist, another insect digging in the dirt. He thinks he is a crusader for truth. He finds old stories, things that were settled long ago, ancient history sealed and forgotten. Jennifer Torres was a transaction, a simple arrangement. She was emotional, unstable. I provided a solution, a clean break, and a new beginning for her. The payment was a kindness. The agreement was for her protection as much as mine. Now they want to use her, to turn a past kindness into a present weapon. They want to show Tori a ghost, to frighten her. They will tell her to look at a video, to see my hands. They do not understand. My hands build empires. They also correct. They restore order when it is lost. They will ask this woman to speak, to break a promise. She will be another victim, not mine, theirs. I will watch it all unfold. They bring in a lawyer, a woman they call the executioner. They think a reputation will frighten me. They do not understand power. She speaks of courts and custody, of ticking clocks. She thinks in weeks. I think in generations. My child, my blood. They plan to steal my heir before he is even born. They seek a sympathetic judge, a woman with a known bias. They stack the deck and call it justice. This is not a surprise. The world is built to tear down men like me. They call it fairness. It is envy. They will need more than emotion. They will need evidence that does not exist. They have 4 weeks. 4 weeks to build a lie. I have a lifetime of truth on my side. A flicker of hope. She feels hope. That is good. Hope is the first step toward surrender. It makes the fall so much harder. Hope must be extinguished, quickly. It is a weed in the garden of order. My response was not an attack. It was an education, a lesson in reality. Her medical records were a clarification. The world needed to see her fragile state. To understand my concern, the psychologist spoke the truth about risk. Her accounts were frozen to prevent her from funding this foolish war. My money will not be used to destroy my family. The world calls her a gold digger. The world is often correct. She has $300, the value of her world without me. The picture was a simple message, a reminder that I am always there. I am watching. I am waiting for her to come home, to return to safety, to return to me. The street has its own logic. Pressure works. The little man, Whitman, made a choice. The correct choice. He chose his family over a lost cause. He understands now. His fear is a return to sanity. Diane and James see it as defeat. They are small. They call me an abuser. They use these words like clubs. An abuser isolates. An abuser threatens. I do not abuse. I protect. I secure my assets. I eliminate threats. I am simply making the cost of their war unbearable. I am making peace the only logical option. She lies in her room. The hope is gone. That is the point. Hope is a fantasy. I am her reality. Soon she will accept that. The candle is out. The storm is here. She calls her father in the night. She is afraid. Good. She should be. The world is a dangerous place without my protection. She feels eyes on her. She is not wrong. I am always watching. 26 days. The time drains away. The world outside her father's walls is my world. I own the news vans. I own the narrative. The reporters shout my questions. The protesters carry my truth. A dead rat. A crude but effective message. A symbol for those who betray. Her father's shaking hands prove its power. He cannot protect her. Only I can. She hides in a room meant for my son. She retreats into a fantasy. She believes she is preparing for a new life. She paints walls. She folds clothes. She is playing house, a sad little pantomime of control. She arranges socks, tiny, perfect rows of socks. This is what her rebellion has been reduced to. It is pathetic. A mind unraveling. Her friend finds her on the floor, lost in a meaningless task. She thinks organizing these small things will save her. She is building a crib, a cage for my son. She struggles. She is alone. She cannot even perform this simple task without difficulty. Becca asks her what she is doing. She is breaking. That is what she is doing. Every folded blanket, every sorted sock. It is a quiet scream, a testament to her weakness, a proof of my necessity. She confesses her weakness. She cannot control anything. The truth finally comes out. The threats, the fear, the dead rat. All of it was necessary to bring her to this point, to this moment of clarity. Her hands tremble, her voice cracks. The tears are not for me to see, but I know they are there. Her friend holds her, a useless gesture, comfort from the powerless. She says it is okay to fall apart. She is wrong. It is never okay to fall apart. Strength is everything. Her friend says she will help her get back up, but she cannot. Only I can do that. I have broken her. I have broken her down. Now, I will put her back together, the way she was meant to be mine. I imagine her tears, crocodile tears for her best friend, a performance to garner sympathy. She mourns a man who never existed, a future she was not worthy of. She sits in a nursery I paid for, in a house I own, surrounded by things I provided, and she dares to feel wronged. She thinks of a family she actively worked to undermine with her selfishness, with her constant need for more. She chose him, she chose me, and she was the most valuable acquisition I ever made. Now she is a liability, an asset to be liquidated. She made her choice, and I am about to make mine. It was a masterpiece, this life I had built. I looked at a photograph of us from before she started to forget her place. She had potential, Victoria did, but it was raw, unfocused. She wasted her energy on pointless things, like running until she was exhausted. I remember telling her, this energy belongs to us, to our future. So she stopped. She saw the logic. She was a good listener back then. She put away her childish trophies and running shoes. It was a necessary sacrifice, a step toward a better life, a life I was giving her. Her friends were the same, loud, common. They filled her head with useless chatter about books and gossip. They did not understand our world. They would have dragged her down. So I pruned them from her life, one by one. I was her protector. I was building her into the woman she was meant to be. I was giving her everything. Now she cries. She calls it pain. I call it ingratitude. I gave her a world of influence and power, and she repaid me with foolish opinions at dinner parties, public disagreements that made me look weak. I had to silence that noise, for her own good, for my own sanity. I simply taught her that her thoughts were best kept to herself. Her agreement was all I ever needed. I remember her mother, a bitter woman, whispering poison in her ear on her deathbed. Be big, she said. Be loud. Terrible advice for a woman who needs to navigate a delicate world. I did not make her small. I made her elegant. I made her refined. I carved away the parts of her that were coarse and unbecoming. She was Victoria Caldwell, a girl running charities. I made her Mrs. Derek Ashford. I gave her a name that mattered, a name that opened doors. She simply forgot to be thankful. She is hiding at her father's house. I allow this. A brief holiday from her responsibilities will make her appreciate them more. She will sit in that quiet room and remember the life I provide. She thinks she is planning something. The thought is almost amusing. She has never made a real decision on her own. I have always guided her, always chosen the right path for us. This little rebellion is a tantrum, nothing more. The clock ticks. 22 days. She will come back. They always do. My world keeps turning. My business thrives. I have contingencies for every situation, for every mood. Amber is a perfect contingency. Simple, appreciative. She understands her role perfectly. She is a pleasant distraction while Victoria learns her lesson. The second a phone is a business tool. A man like me needs layers of privacy. Victoria never understood that. She saw shadows where there was only strategy. Her mind was too simple for the world I operate in. It is why I had to protect her from it. I imagine her now, alone in the dark, lost, frightened, waiting for me to come and rescue her from her own foolish choices. She probably thinks I am angry, but I am not. I am just disappointed. A buzz on my desk, a minor report, nothing of consequence. No one would dare cross me. The loyalty I command is absolute. It is built on fear and reward. A perfect system. A system she is about to be reminded of. She will learn that there is no world for her outside of the one I created. Amber is an investment in my peace of mind. She is beautiful, predictable. She does not ask questions. The apartment, the gifts, they are trivial expenses. The cost of maintaining order in my life while my wife is having a moment of confusion. Victoria would not understand. She would see it as a betrayal. I see it as management. I manage my assets. I manage my wife. It is all the same principle. The idea of them meeting is absurd. Two different worlds that should never touch. One is the elegant centerpiece of my life. The other is a temporary decoration. Victoria lacks the courage for such a move. She is all tears and trembling hands, not a strategist. She is waiting for me to solve her problems, as I always have. It was a necessary correction. She needed to be protected from her own destructive impulses. That woman, Amber, she was a clean slate, a chance to build something perfect. But Tori would try to poison it. I could picture the scene perfectly. Tori, with her feigned vulnerability, showing that unfortunate video, twisting a moment of discipline into something ugly. A private matter made public. Amber would be confused at first, but I would explain it to her. I would show her what real love looks like, real protection. Tori never understood that. She fought against my guidance. She mistook my care for control. I had to teach her, just as I would have to teach Amber. Some people require a firm hand. It is not cruelty, it is clarity. It is for their own good. I was simply protecting our future. This little drama with Gregory was a distraction, a sign of weakness in others, not in me. James and Diane thought they could frighten him. They offered him protection. A man like Gregory does not understand true strength. He sees a black car and panics. He does not see it as a reminder of his obligations, a reminder of the world I have built for him. His family is safe because of me. His daughters go to good schools because of me. He sees threats. I see order. My world has rules. Loyalty is the first. Gregory was forgetting that. I knew they would get to him eventually. Weak men always break, but it did not matter. His small betrayal was a footnote in a much larger story, a story that I was still writing. He was a pawn, and pawns are meant to be sacrificed. 24 hours a day. It was a laughable offer, as if a few hired guards could stop the world from turning. Gregory was a child frightened of the dark, so he handed them a key to a room I had already emptied. He thought he was saving himself. He thought he was a hero, protecting his daughters. He called me a monster. Men always invent monsters to justify their own cowardice. They cannot stand to look at a man who builds empires, a man who does what is necessary, so they invent stories. They whisper in parking garages. They trade their little secrets on a piece of plastic. His hands were shaking. Of course they were. He was dismantling his own life, not mine. He just did not know it yet. The doctors were always the easiest to manage, so self-important, so certain of their authority. Catherine Mills and her subpoena, a piece of paper. My lawyers sent a letter, a promise. We would dismantle her practice. We would bury her in legal filings. We would turn her life into a ruin. It was a simple calculation, her career versus a difficult patient. Dr. Hoffman would consult her attorney. The attorney would tell her about the law. But I understood a higher law, the law of consequence. Comply, and your world ends. It was not a threat. It was a fact. She held my wife's file in her hands, a collection of lies and exaggerations. I was confident she would make the correct choice. People always do when they understand the stakes. I saw the report. She signed it. A foolish, sentimental gesture. The file was meaningless. A collection of photographs without context. Notes filled with hysterical interpretations. Bruises from a clumsy fall. A racing pulse from a woman prone to anxiety. She documented a marriage she could never understand. The passion. The intensity. Sometimes things broke. That is the price of a great love. This doctor, in her sterile office, knew nothing of it. She signed a piece of paper. She thought it was an act of courage. It was merely a trigger, an action that would set in motion her own professional ruin. The file was submitted. Let them have it. It was a story I could easily rewrite, and I would. Jennifer. I had not thought of that name in years. I gave her a new one. I gave her a new life, a quiet little town, a house with a garden. I gave her peace. The $500,000 was a gift, a severance from a past she needed to forget. The agreement was for her own good, to protect her from the gossip, to allow her to heal. And this man, Marcus, comes knocking. He shows her a video. He tries to drag her back into the darkness. He thinks he can undo the world I created for her. He does not understand. I did not silence her. I saved her. She was broken when I found her. I made her whole again. She would not talk. Gratitude is a powerful cage. Then I heard she had spoken. The ingratitude was astonishing. I gave her everything. $500,000, a quiet life. And for what? So she could betray me over a photograph. She whispered about a broken wrist. She omitted the part where she struck me first. She talked about a hospital. She forgot that I was the one who carried her there. I told them she fell from a horse. It was a kinder story than the truth. The truth was that she had a rage inside her, a destructive storm I tried to calm. I failed. Now she chooses to break herself again, for a woman she has never met. Some people do not want to be saved. They prefer to live in the wreckage. So be it. The media is a beautiful instrument. You play it with precision. The donation was a masterstroke. The tears were genuine. I weep for a world so eager to believe the worst. They saw a philanthropist, a good man suffering. They called Tori unstable. They said she provoked me. The truth was finally taking root. Then came the final move, my petition. I had to protect my child from its own mother. That night, my phone rang. It was her. Her voice was small, broken. The fight was gone. I knew this moment would come. They always break. They always realize they need me. She was calling to surrender, to come home. I leaned back in my chair. A feeling of peace washed over me. I would be generous. I would forgive her. I answered the phone, ready to welcome her back. Her voice on the phone, so small, so predictable, she is ready to surrender. I shift into the role she needs. The forgiving husband, the patient leader. My voice becomes warm, a comforting blanket. I tell her I have been worried. I tell her I want our family together. This is all true. I built this family. It is mine. She and the child are my legacy. Then she asks the question, the foolish, naive question about her so-called helpers. And the mask does not slip. It comes off. I want her to see. Her father will be ruined. A lesson in meddling. Her lawyer will be disgraced. A lesson in ambition. That reporter will simply disappear. A lesson in curiosity. She needs to understand. I am not a man to be challenged. Gregory is already gone. Everyone who stood against me will be erased. This is not cruelty. It is order. It is the price of her education. She will come home. She will finally understand. She thinks she can hide things. This is a simple matter of family order. I know where Gregory's daughters attend school. Lincoln Elementary. One is in 3rd grade. One is in 5th. I know their names. I know the pickup schedule. It is all just information, leverage to restore what is mine. Her voice on the phone was so calm. An act, a performance to wound me. She asked if I would come home. Of course I will. It is my home. I told her I would think about it. Let her feel the weight of my decision. Then she hung up. A small, childish rebellion. She is sitting in the dark. I am sure of it. Frightened. Good. Fear is a kind of respect. She needs to remember that I built her world. I can just as easily tear it down. She is making this harder than it needs to be. This is a correction, a necessary one. She will learn. They always do. She simply had to come home. Instead, she started a war. 10 days later, on a Tuesday, the article appeared. A cheap betrayal, published for the world to see. The headline called me a monster. It was 12,000 words of lies, 6 months of pathetic insects digging into my life. 4 women, ungrateful women I gave everything to. They spoke of charm, then isolation, then control. They call it control. I call it structure. I gave their lives meaning. Jennifer Torres. I remember her. The broken wrist was an accident. Her hysteria caused it. She screamed. I took her to the hospital. I held her hand. I protected her. The check for $500,000 was a kindness, a gesture of my regret for her clumsiness. The NDA was a business decision. She was a liability. She signed it because she understood consequences. She was smart then. She is a fool now. She claims I told her I would destroy her life. A dramatic memory. I simply explained the reality of her situation. She said she spent 5 years pretending. She was paid to pretend. That was the agreement. Now she cannot live with it. A failure of her own character. The article listed other grievances. 3 former employees, an intern who deserved much worse for his incompetence, a female assistant who was too fragile for the real world. Broken furniture is the cost of passion. Weak people cower. Strong people build empires. Then came Gregory's betrayal. My numbers twisted into accusations. Cayman Islands, Switzerland, $200 million. These were not crimes. They were masterpieces of strategy. He calls it hiding money. I call it protecting assets. The stills from the Gala footage were the worst. A private moment, a husband disciplining his wife. They made it look ugly. Gregory's final quote was the deepest cut. He said he watched me become a monster. He is wrong. I was always a king. I watched him turn people against me. They paid them off. I watched him steal my reputation. And I will do something because I am not afraid. The truth must be corrected. Within an hour, the article was a plague. 10,000 shares. Within 2 hours, my company issued a statement. All lies. All of it. Within 3 hours, more opportunists emerged. By midnight, my stock had dropped 15%. A temporary dip, driven by panic. I left her a voicemail. She did not have the courage to answer. I told her the article was filth. I told her I would sue that reporter. I will take our daughter. She will never see her again. It was not a threat. It was a promise. I saved the voicemail in my mind. Every word was a statement of my power. She thinks my words are a shovel, that I am digging my own grave. She is wrong. I am forging a sword. The strangulation was a misunderstanding. The courtroom was a theater of the absurd. 8 days before my child was due, day 1, Catherine presented her fantasy, medical records from some quack doctor, 3 years of documented nonsense, clinical photographs of meaningless bruises, arms, ribs, wrists, notes about flinching, cervical bruising. 17 people from the gala told their rehearsed stories. They said I was drinking. They said I made threats. The security footage played without sound. Mute puppets on a screen, my hands on her throat, her body limp. It was all taken out of context. Gregory's testimony, bank statements, wire transfers, $200 million of my genius, reframed as theft. Jennifer Torres on the stand, her voice steady, an impressive performance, the broken wrist, the NDA, the money. 5 years of my generosity, twisted into shame. Then they played the recording, my own voice, a private conversation, my words about her father, her lawyer, Marcus Webb, Gregory's children. The courtroom went silent. They were finally listening. My lawyers were useless from day 2. Fools. Judge Brennan dismissed my psychiatric experts immediately. She refused to hear the truth about Victoria's mind. She only wanted their useless opinions. Then my mother took the stand. A simple black dress. She played the part of the grieving matriarch. She called Tori difficult, manipulative, correctly. Then the video played, the one my mother filmed. Her hand was shaking. She filmed my hands on Tori's throat. My mother recorded it all. You filmed your son, the prosecutor said. You did nothing. You did not get help. You just kept filming. My mother whispered she was in shock. Or perhaps you were collecting evidence. The lawyer sneered. My mother had no answer. She broke. The judge reviewed the lies. Then she delivered her insane ruling. She called the evidence overwhelming. A fiction. She spoke of a pattern of behavior. Discipline, I call it. She mentioned medical records, forgeries. Then she pointed to the video of me calming my hysterical, pregnant wife. She looked at me. Mr. Ashford, I find your defense insulting. She called it an attempt to murder. It was a domestic dispute. She accused me of a smear campaign, of fabricating records, of paying for lies. She accused me of standing in her courtroom and lying. She turned to Tori. I am granting your petition. Sole custody. My own child. She would permit supervised visitation. 1 hour a month. A prison. That was my sentence. She would review it after a year. She issued an emergency protective order, 500 feet. I could not go near my own wife. I could not contact her. Any violation meant immediate arrest. She said she was referring the case for criminal prosecution. You should be in jail, she said. The gavel fell. I watched Tori collapse into her lawyer's arms. Crying with relief, James hugged them. Everyone was crying. They had won. They had stolen my daughter. The clock read 3 days until the due date. They had timed it perfectly. 2 days later, at 3:17 in the morning, I knew. A contraction must have woken her. She would have timed them, 5 minutes apart, then 4, then 3. This was not practice. It was real. She would have called her father. He would have answered immediately. He was always hovering. Dad, I think it is time. I am coming. 10 minutes later, he would be there. The hospital bag packed, everything ready, everything they had plotted against me. But they were not ready. No one could plan for what came next. At the hospital, their doctor was waiting, ready for Tori. You are at 7 centimeters already, she would say. This baby is coming fast. They moved Tori to a private room, her father holding her hand. Her friend Becca arrived 20 minutes later. The epidural helped. The labor was fast. Too fast. At 9 centimeters, the doctor's face changed. She called for more nurses. She whispered to the anesthesiologist, but the important words were clear. The bruising on her cervix was causing problems. She was bleeding out. Everything moved quickly then. The room filled with people. The monitors began to scream. A new sound, faster. The doctor made a choice. We need an emergency C-section now. The room would spin for Tori. Hands would lift her. The cold air of the operating room. I imagine her reaching out for her father. Is the baby okay? My baby. The baby is fine. You are fine. Charlotte was born at 4:22 in the morning. Tiny, screaming, strong, unaware of the damage her mother brought upon us all. But Tori was not fine. The bleeding was bad. She lost too much blood. The doctor worked. They called for transfusions. More machines, more people. Tori's vision would blur. The last thing she saw was her father holding my daughter. His face a mask of joy and terror, a new baby in his arms, and his own daughter dying on the table. She woke in intensive care 48 hours later. Machines beeping, her body in pain. The first thing she saw was a bassinet. My Charlotte was sleeping inside. So close. Tori would reach out. Her hand shaking, she could touch her fingers, the smallest fingers, but she could not lift her. She was too weak, too broken. The tubes and the wires would not let her. For the first 2 days of my daughter's life, her mother could only watch her through bars. She could not hold her. She could not feed her. This is what her weakness cost. The first moments of a child's life. Then my lawyer made her move. She appeared at Tori's bedside on the 3rd day. Her face was grim. Tori, I have something to tell you. What happened? My lawyers filed an emergency motion. We went to a different judge, a sensible one. We argued her medical crisis proved she was unfit to care for a child. We requested temporary custody be transferred to my mother. Tori would stare at her lawyer, lying in a hospital bed, tubes in her body, almost dead from her own weakness, and she had not even held my daughter yet. They had 24 hours to respond. Then, the next necessary step was taken. Gregory Whitman was found beaten in a parking garage. His laptop was gone. The one with all the financial records he stole. The police called it a random mugging, but everyone knew the truth. I may have a protective order, I may face charges, but I still have people loyal to me, people who get things done. Tori lay in her bed. She could not walk. She could not hold Charlotte. Gregory was in a coma. A different judge was saving my child. Her father was uselessly pacing a hallway. It was a matter of order, of stability. I saw her in that bed, a wreck of a woman, and knew she was unfit. I sent my mother to bring Charlotte. This was the correct, logical step. Tori could barely function. A child needs strength, not this pathetic display. I won the hearing. I had the facts. The judge saw the truth. Yet none of it mattered. She was still fighting, pulling everyone into her vortex of drama. Catherine arrived, another soldier in this pointless war. All her papers and her briefcase were just noise. They could sign 1,000 documents. It changes nothing. A child needs a proper home. I was providing one. This was not cruelty. This was responsibility. They had 24 hours to play their games. I had a lifetime to build for my daughter. Let them have their minutes. I would have the years. The system is a tool. You use it, or it uses you. My people found a lever. A judge with a financial connection. This is not corruption. It is business. It is how the world works. James understood this, or he should have. He brought the information to her. A chance to be pragmatic. But Tori refused. She spoke of being better, of doing things the right way. This was her sickness, this toxic naivety. This was not about morality. It was about securing my daughter's future. She claimed she was thinking of Charlotte. She wanted to look her daughter in the eye. I wanted to give my daughter a world, not a hollow speech. She was fighting a battle she could not comprehend, and she was going to lose because she did not have the will to win. James looked at her with pride. He saw strength. I saw a fool. She had almost died. That was her body's failure, not mine. Now she was fighting for custody from a hospital bed, an emotional ploy, a performance for the court. The hearing began. I did not need to be there. I pay lawyers to handle such trivialities. My time is for building, for creating, not for sitting in sterile rooms listening to arguments. They said Tori was unfit. This was a simple truth. Margaret, my mother, was the logical choice for a guardian, a stable, powerful matriarch. The video started. There she was, a ghost on a screen, the pale face, the tubes, the beeping machines, all of it designed for sympathy. The bassinet was just visible, a prop in her little play. This was not a fight for a child. It was theater. And I was not interested in the show. Then she began to speak, twisting the story, blaming me for her body's weakness. Her voice was thin, but her words were poison. She spoke of showing up, of being a mother, as if presence was the only metric that mattered. I showed up by creating an empire, by securing a legacy. I did not have time for hospital vigils. I had a world to run, a world my daughter would inherit. She called me absent. I called it delegation. The strong delegate, the weak grandstand. The courtroom was silent. They were captivated by her fiction. The judge looked at my empty chair. He saw absence. He should have seen power. Then he spoke. Motion denied. The words did not compute. He chose the broken woman, the broken logic. He chose weakness over strength. The cloud, a foolish oversight. Whitman was a snake I should have crushed sooner. He backed everything up. All the data, all the numbers. It did not matter that we had the laptop. The real damage was done. The numbers were just that, numbers. The cost of doing business at my level. They called it stealing $210 million. I called it leveraging assets. The company was mine. The money was mine. The SEC saw a crime. I saw a business decision. And now they were coming for me. A systematic attack. They were destroying everything. While she was at her father's house, holding the baby, she held the child, and I held the fallout. She did not sleep. I could not rest. My world was being dismantled piece by piece. Federal agents in my headquarters. A violation. It was a war on all fronts. They froze my accounts. A temporary problem. They subpoenaed records. More noise. The $210 million was an investment in my vision, not embezzlement. Fools could not see the difference. Tori went back to her little non-profit. A pathetic retreat to a meaningless life. She was part-time, recovering, rebuilding. She was building a shack while I had created a skyscraper. She was nothing without me. The board meeting was the true betrayal. The first vote was close, 7-5. There were still loyalists, people who understood power. I could work with that. I promised them everything. Recovery, innocence. Diane Sullivan, that venomous woman, went to work on them. She used fear. She spoke of liability, of their assets, of their names. She turned them against me. The second vote was 10-2. Terminated. A word that had no place in my life. I was the founder, the builder. This company was my blood. Security guards walked me out. Me, the man who made them all rich. The employees watched, silent, ungrateful. Let them watch. They would be nothing without me. Tori got a promotion, director of her little charity. Her paycheck was a joke. She bought a crib with her own money, a symbol of her small, independent life. It meant nothing. Then they seized everything. My homes, my cars, my art, liquidated to pay back money that was already mine. Creditors, lawsuits. The jackals smelled blood. My lawyers quit. Unpaid bills, an insult. Now I had a public defender for my trial. Tori signed a lease, a one-bedroom cage. The view was a brick wall. How fitting. My view had been the world. Her furniture was hers. The blue couch, the yellow chairs, trophies of her diminished existence. She was proud of this little prison she had built for herself. It was all she deserved. Then Amber called her, another traitor. She had the records, the apartment, the gifts, the trips, all business expenses, the cost of loyalty, or so I thought. More charges, more fraud. They took my company, they took my money, they took my home, and now they were taking my name. But they could not take the truth. I built it all. I earned it all. They were the thieves, not me. They were all just thieves. The case against me felt inescapable. A lie built on more lies. Tori spoke at some support group. 15 sad women in a church basement. She told them her story. I was lucky, she said. My father had resources. He spent everything, but you can save yourself. One tiny step. Call a hotline. Tell someone. Save $1. Take one step. She saw herself in their faces. The door was always unlocked, she whispered. I was my own jailer. A beautiful lie. She was afraid because she was guilty. Then the phone rang. My mother. It was evening. I almost did not answer. Victoria, please do not hang up. What do you want? The anonymous call, she said. The one about my second account. That was me. Silence. This was all my mother's fault. She told Tori how to break me. For 30 years, she understood her place. She knew a man needed control. My father taught me that. She taught me that. It was the only way to build a legacy. She showed me love meant keeping your family in line. Now she cries about creating a monster. She sees one because she is weak. This therapy and support is a betrayal. She should be defending her son. Tori says her actions are not excused. She is right. My mother will never be forgiven for this. She created this mess. She is the one who let it all fall apart. I was simply holding it all together. The visit was my last chance to fix it. This gray room felt like a cage. The lights buzzed. Some woman sat by the door, judging me. Tori was there. Charlotte was in her lap, my daughter, 4 months old. She looked just like me, alert, curious. I walked in. I saw the judgment in Tori's eyes. I had lost weight. My suit was not mine. This was not me. This was a costume for their little play. The trial was a joke. 2 weeks of lies. She sat there so calm. She showed them marks that were barely there. She twisted the story. And they believed her. Every single lie. Now they would sentence me next week. My eyes found my daughter. That is what mattered. Everything I had lost was in that small child. She is beautiful. I had to say it. My voice felt raw. Can I hold her? No. Please, Tori. I just need to hold my daughter. Just for a moment. She said I tried to kill her. She claimed I was killing them both. It was a moment of passion, nothing more. You do not get to hold her. I felt my jaw tighten. I felt the old anger rise. But I was trapped. Cameras watched me. The woman watched me. Guards waited outside. I had no power here. I am sorry. The words tasted like ash. I said it for them. For the show. I was under so much pressure. My work, my family, my legacy. I was not myself. Stop. Her voice was ice. She said I was making excuses, pretending. She said this was the real me. The man who needed order. The man who corrected her. The man who had to restrain her when she became hysterical. That is who a man has to be. I was sick. I needed help. She said I was abusive, not sick. But what is the difference? Sick people need to be fixed. I just wanted to fix our family. She said every consequence was my choice. She said her father spent $800 million to protect her. My father spent $800 million to restore order. That is what real love does. It fixes things. It protects a legacy. She does not understand love. She thinks it is some fairy tale. Love is structure. It is ownership. It is knowing what is best for your family. Tori moved Charlotte on her lap. My daughter reached for a toy. She did not even look at me. Tori has already turned her against me. She said Charlotte will be an adult when I am released. She said my daughter will know everything. She said Charlotte will make her own choice. But the choice was never hers to make. It was always mine. I stood up. The chair screamed against the floor. I cannot do this. I walked out. The door echoed behind me. I did not feel victory. I did not feel vindicated. I felt cheated. I felt a cold, hard emptiness. A weight had been placed on me, a weight of injustice that I would carry for years. It was not supposed to be this way. I feel nothing, she had said. That is exactly right. My lawyer texted me a week later, 25 years. They called it attempted murder, embezzlement, witness intimidation. They ran the sentences together. It is really over. I did not go. Why would I watch them celebrate my destruction? I imagined her at a park with my daughter, 7 months old now, my child. She read the text. She put her phone away. She pushed a swing. I imagined my daughter laughing. A sound I would not hear, a sound that was stolen from me. That night I sat in a cell. I recorded my own story in my head, a story for my daughter. the real story. I needed her to know the truth. About me, about her mother, about how our family was destroyed. Your mother was weak. She could not handle the pressure of our world. She made a choice to hurt our family. That was her choice, not mine, not yours, hers. I stayed with her for 3 years. I made excuses for her instability. I tried to fix her. I thought my love was enough. I learned that love is not enough when the other person refuses to be strong. I learned that asking for help is a sign of failure. Your grandfather, all of them, they helped her ruin us. She could not have done it alone. The moment she betrayed me was the moment our family died. You are not responsible for your mother's weakness. Her choices have nothing to do with who you are, or the legacy you will carry. I will never let anyone make you forget who you are, and I will teach you that strength is control. I am teaching you now. My story was saved in my mind. I would add to it. I would build the complete picture, the truth, not her lies, just facts, just reality, just my love. In a prison cell 500 miles away, I sat on metal. I stared at concrete, 6 feet by 8 feet. A light buzzed above me. This orange suit was my uniform. I had nothing. No pictures, no letters. My money was gone. My company was gone. My homes, my cars, my name, all of it erased. 25 years, a quarter of a century of this cage. And this silence. I closed my eyes. I saw her. I saw Charlotte, in that gray room, on Tori's lap, 4 months old, reaching for a toy, not seeing me, not knowing me. The stranger across the table was her father. When I get out, she will be gone. She would be 25 years old. She would know their lies. She would have read their articles and their court papers. She would have listened to her mother's poison. She would think she knew who her father was, and she would make their choice. In an apartment I paid for, my daughter was learning to stand. She would fall, and she would get back up. My daughter was not a child who cried. She was a child who tried again. On the walls, there would be pictures, Tori's mother, her father James, Becca, all of them. There would be no pictures of me, not a single one. Tori would be on the floor, watching my daughter. Her phone would light up. A text about my appeal. Sentencing upheld. 25 years confirmed. It is really over. She would read it, and she would put the phone face down. She would choose to forget me. I see her in my mind, my daughter, wobbling, standing, looking at her mother, smiling, taking a step without me. James Caldwell spent $800 million to do this. 30 years of his work, all to ruin me. They ask him if it was worth it. He says the money was always hers. He stole my life for her. I entered prison with nothing. My fortune, gone. My company, gone. My family, gone. Just 25 years of walls. She will grow up in another man's house. Victoria Caldwell. She erased my name. The day it was finalized, she pretends to be the woman she was before me. The marathon runner, the woman with opinions. She was nothing before me. I gave her a world. She chose to burn it down. I will not reflect on my actions. They were justified. Every single one. They want to tell meaningful stories. They want to inspire people. They believe stories can change lives. This is my story. It is about power and betrayal. It is about a king who was torn down by lesser men and a faithless queen. I will sit in this cell. I will remember every detail. And I will know that I was right. I was always right. They were just too weak to see it. That is the only lesson here. This content was carefully researched, developed, and manually edited by our team to deliver meaningful stories with valuable life lessons. Every narrative is crafted to entertain, inspire, and empower our audience. We believe that great stories can change lives, and we are committed to bringing you content that matters. Thank you for being part of our community.